If someone played with your heart, lied to your face, and made you feel like you were never enough, then listen carefully. The greatest revenge is not making them suffer. The greatest revenge is becoming the person they can never forget, never replace, and never reach again. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear could change the way you see heartbreak forever. There comes a moment in life when pain stops being just pain. It becomes a teacher, a wake-up call, a mirror that forces you to see yourself in a way you've never seen before. And if you've ever been played by someone you trusted, someone you loved, someone you believed would stay, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. You know the sleepless nights. You know the endless questions. You know the feeling of staring at your phone, hoping for a message that never comes. You know the ache of realizing that the person who promised you everything was never planning to give you anything at all. The hardest part is not that they left. The hardest part is that they made you doubt yourself. They made you wonder if you were attractive enough, good enough, smart enough, worthy enough. And that's the real damage people like that leave behind. They don't just break your heart. They attack your confidence. They make you question your value. And for a while, you start believing the lies. You start thinking that maybe if you had done more, loved harder, sacrificed more, they would have stayed. But let me tell you something that might hurt to hear. People who play others don't leave because they found someone better. They leave because they are searching for something they cannot find within themselves. A person who truly knows how to love does not play games. A person who truly values another human being does not manipulate emotions. A person who truly respects love does not treat hearts like toys. The problem was never your worth. The problem was their character. And understanding that truth can change your life. Let me tell you about a woman named Emma. Emma believed she had found her forever person. For 3 years, she gave everything she had. Her time, her energy, her loyalty, her dreams. She showed up when he needed support. She encouraged him when nobody else believed in him. She stood beside him through difficult moments. And every time he made a mistake, she found a reason to forgive him. Because that's what people do when they love deeply. They give chances. They believe in potential. They hold on to hope. But one day, Emma discovered something that shattered her world. The man she trusted had been lying for months. While she was planning a future, he was keeping options. While she was building loyalty, he was entertaining attention from other women. While she was investing in love, he was investing in convenience. When she confronted him, he didn't apologize. He didn't fight for her. He didn't show remorse. Instead, he acted as though losing her meant nothing. And that moment broke her, not because he left, but because she realized she had been loving someone who never valued what he had. For months afterward, Emma suffered. She cried every night. She replayed every conversation. She analyzed every memory. She searched for answers that didn't exist. And one evening, sitting alone in her apartment, she looked into the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back at her. The sparkle in her eyes was gone. The confidence she once carried had disappeared. The laughter that used to fill rooms had become silence. And that's when something happened, something powerful, something that changed everything. She asked herself one question. What if my life isn't ending? What if it's beginning? That question became the turning point. Because sometimes the biggest transformation starts with a single thought. What if this pain is preparing me for something greater? What if this heartbreak is creating space for something better? What if losing them is actually helping me find myself? Emma didn't wake up healed the next day. Healing doesn't work that way. Growth doesn't happen overnight. But she made a decision that many people never make. She stopped focusing on him and started focusing on herself. At first, it felt strange. After spending years thinking about someone else, she didn't know how to prioritize her own happiness. But she started small. She began taking care of her health. She started reading books that challenged her mindset. She developed new skills. She reconnected with friends she had neglected. She pursued goals she had postponed. And little by little, she started remembering who she was before the heartbreak. She remembered her strength. She remembered her dreams. She remembered her value. And something incredible happened. The more she invested in herself, the less power her past had over her. Because that's how healing works. You don't heal by obsessing over what hurt you. You heal by building something stronger than the pain. Many people make a mistake after being played. They become obsessed with proving something. They want revenge. They want validation. They want the other person to suffer. They spend months hoping the person who hurt them will finally realize what they lost. But here's the truth. As long as your happiness depends on their regret, you're still giving them control. Think about that. If your peace requires their apology, they still own part of your future. If your confidence depends on their realization, they still have influence over your life. Freedom begins when you stop waiting. Freedom begins when you stop chasing closure. Freedom begins when you decide that your value does not require someone else's recognition. Emma eventually understood this. And when she did, everything changed. She stopped checking his social media. She stopped asking mutual friends about him. She stopped wondering whether he missed her, because she became too busy building a life she loved, a life that no longer revolved around someone else's choices. And that's when something unexpected happened. For the first time since the breakup, she felt peace, not because he came back, not because he apologized, not because justice arrived, but because she discovered something greater. She discovered herself. You see, many people think heartbreak is about losing someone. Sometimes heartbreak is actually about finding yourself again. Sometimes the person who leaves your life creates the exact space you need to become who you were meant to be. The pain doesn't feel like a gift when you're going through it. It feels unfair. It feels cruel. It feels unbearable. But years later, many people look back and realize that the experience they once hated became the foundation of their growth. The betrayal that crushed them taught them boundaries. The rejection that hurt them taught them self-respect. The disappointment that broke them taught them resilience. And that is why your story isn't over. In fact, it may just be beginning. The person who played you may think they won. They may think they got away with everything. They may believe they'll never face consequences. But life has a funny way of teaching lessons, because eventually people encounter the results of their own choices. And while they're dealing with the consequences of who they chose to become, your responsibility is becoming the best version of yourself. Not for revenge, not for validation, not to prove anything, but because your future deserves it, because your dreams deserve it, because your life deserves it, and because one day you'll realize that the greatest victory wasn't making them regret losing you. The greatest victory was learning that you never needed them to recognize your worth in the first place. And that realization can change everything. There is something that happens when a person finally stops chasing answers. The noise begins to fade. The confusion starts to clear. And for the first time in a very long time, they can hear their own voice again. Emma didn't realize it at first, but every day she spent rebuilding herself was creating a version of her that was stronger than the woman who had been hurt. The process wasn't glamorous. There were no dramatic movie moments, no magical mornings where she woke up completely healed. There were still days when memories appeared unexpectedly. Days when certain songs reminded her of the past. Days when loneliness whispered old questions into her mind. But she learned something important. Healing is not the absence of pain. Healing is learning that pain no longer controls your decisions. And that distinction changed her life. One afternoon, nearly a year after the breakup, Emma was sitting in a coffee shop working on a project she had once been too afraid to pursue. As she looked around the room, she noticed something strange. She wasn't thinking about him. Not because she was forcing herself not to. Not because she was distracting herself. She simply wasn't thinking about him. For a moment, she sat there in silence. Then she smiled because she realized she had crossed a line she never thought she could cross. The person who once occupied her thoughts every minute of every day had become a distant memory, not erased, not hated, just no longer important. And that's one of the most powerful moments a person can experience. The day someone loses their emotional hold over you, the day their choices stop defining your happiness, the day your future becomes bigger than your past. Now listen carefully, because this next lesson might be the most important lesson of all. Many people think the person who played them is living a perfect life. They imagine them smiling, winning, thriving, never looking back. But life is much more complicated than that. Let me tell you about a man named Daniel. Daniel was charming, confident, popular. He knew exactly what to say to make people like him. For years, he moved through relationships without taking them seriously. When things became difficult, he left. When commitment required effort, he disappeared. When accountability arrived, he avoided it. And because he always found someone new, he convinced himself that his actions had no consequences. Then one day he met someone extraordinary, a woman unlike anyone he had ever known. She was kind without being weak, confident without being arrogant, loving without losing herself. For the first time, Daniel felt something real, something deeper than excitement, something deeper than attraction. He felt respect. And that scared him because respect demands maturity. Love demands responsibility. Connection demands honesty. And Daniel had spent years avoiding all three. Eventually, his old habits returned. The same habits that had destroyed every relationship before. The same selfish decisions, the same emotional games, the same fear of commitment. And eventually, she walked away. But this time, something was different. This time, he couldn't replace what he lost. Because not every person is replaceable. Not every connection can be recreated. Not every opportunity returns. For years afterward, Daniel compared everyone he met to the woman who left. Nobody measured up. Nobody made him feel what she had made him feel. And that's when he finally understood something painful. The consequences of your actions don't always arrive immediately. Sometimes they arrive years later. Sometimes they arrive when you finally matured enough to understand what you threw away. And that realization can be devastating. People often ask why those who hurt others eventually seem regretful. The answer is simple. Time reveals value. When someone is immature, they often focus on excitement, attention, convenience, temporary feelings. But as life moves forward, they begin to understand what truly matters. Trust, loyalty, character, consistency. And by the time they recognize those things, the people who offered them may already be gone. That is why you should never waste your energy trying to force someone to see your worth. Life will teach lessons that you never could. Your responsibility is not teaching someone how valuable you are. Your responsibility is recognizing your value yourself. There is a huge difference. Because when you understand your value, you stop accepting treatment that contradicts it. You stop begging for respect. You stop negotiating your standards. You stop convincing people to love you. You stop shrinking yourself to fit into places you were never meant to stay. Emma eventually learned this lesson too. One evening, she attended a gathering with friends. As she walked into the room, people immediately noticed her energy, not because she looked different, not because she was trying to impress anyone, but because confidence has a presence, and genuine self-respect changes the way a person carries themselves. During the evening, someone asked her a question. "What happened to you?" The question surprised her. "What do you mean?" she replied. The friend smiled. "You seem different, happier, stronger." Emma paused. Then she gave an answer she would never have been able to give a year earlier. "I stopped trying to earn love from people who didn't know how to give it." The room became quiet because everybody understood the truth behind those words. So many people spend years trying to earn what should be freely given. Respect, loyalty, appreciation. effort. But healthy relationships aren't built on earning basic decency. They're built on mutual respect, mutual investment, mutual care. The moment you understand that, everything changes because you stop seeing rejection as proof of your inadequacy. You start seeing it as information. You start realizing that some people leave because they are incapable of appreciating what they have. Some people leave because they are fighting battles they refuse to address. Some people leave because they are committed to patterns that eventually destroy everything they touch. And none of those things define your worth. One of the greatest lies heartbreak tells is that someone else's choice is evidence of your value. It is not. A person's inability to recognize your worth does not reduce your worth. A person's lack of commitment does not make you less deserving of commitment. A person's dishonesty does not make you unlovable. The mistake many people make is internalizing someone else's flaws. They turn another person's behavior into a judgment about themselves. But imagine walking into a room carrying a diamond. If someone mistakes it for a piece of glass, has the diamond lost value? Of course not. Its value remains exactly the same. The only thing missing is recognition. And the same is true for you. The wrong person's inability to appreciate you does not change who you are. It only reveals who they are. The challenge is believing that when your heart is broken. The challenge is remembering that when you're crying at night. The challenge is trusting that when disappointment feels overwhelming. But if you can hold on long enough, if you can keep growing long enough, if you can keep believing in yourself long enough, eventually the truth becomes undeniable. You were never the problem. You were simply giving your love to someone who didn't know how to protect it. And once that truth settles into your heart, something extraordinary begins to happen. You stop asking why they played you, and you start asking how far you can go without them. That question changes everything. Because one question keeps you trapped in the past. The other builds your future. And the people who experience the greatest transformations in life always choose the future. Not because it's easy, but because it's worth it. The most dangerous moment after heartbreak is not the day they leave. It's the day you become tempted to go back. The day loneliness disguises itself as love. The day memories begin editing the truth. The day your mind starts replaying the good moments while conveniently forgetting the pain. That is where many people lose the progress they fought so hard to build. Because time has a strange way of softening memories. It makes you remember the laughter, the vacations, the late night conversations, the promises. And sometimes it causes you to forget the tears, the disrespect, the broken trust, the sleepless nights, the constant uncertainty. Emma experienced that temptation too. Nearly 18 months after the breakup, her phone lit up with a message she never expected. It was him, the man who had once shattered her heart, the man who had walked away without looking back, the man who had made her question her value. His message was simple. Hey, just 6 words. 6 words that instantly brought back years of memories. For a moment, her heart raced. For a moment, old emotions resurfaced. For a moment, she imagined what it would feel like if he finally apologized, if he finally understood, if he finally became the man she once hoped he would be. And that's what makes these moments so dangerous, because they don't test your feelings. They test your growth. Anyone can stay strong when the person who hurt them is absent. The real challenge comes when the door opens again, when the opportunity to repeat old patterns presents itself, when the past asks for another chance. Emma stared at the message for a long time. Then she did something she never would have done before. She asked herself a question. Not, do I still love him? Not, do I miss him? Not, what if things are different now? Instead, she asked, has he become the person I deserve? That question changed everything. Because too many people focus on their emotions while ignoring reality. Love matters. Feelings matter. But character matters more. Respect matters more. Consistency matters more. And when Emma looked honestly at the situation, she realized something. The man who sent that message was not reaching out because he had transformed. He was reaching out because he missed access. He missed familiarity. He missed comfort. And there's a difference between missing a person and missing what a person provided. Many people confuse the two. A person can miss your attention without valuing your heart. A person can miss your loyalty without respecting your boundaries. A person can miss your presence without deserving your future. The ability to recognize the distinction can save years of your life. Emma never responded, not because she hated him, not because she wanted revenge, but because she had finally learned the lesson that heartbreak came to teach her. Not everyone who returns deserves reentry. That lesson is powerful because growth is not measured by how much pain you survive. Growth is measured by the standards you develop afterward. You see, when someone plays you, they often leave behind a wound, but they also leave behind an opportunity to discover what you will and will not tolerate, an opportunity to strengthen boundaries, an opportunity to develop self-respect. And if you learn the lesson correctly, the pain becomes an investment in your future. There was another woman named Sophia. Unlike Emma, Sophia spent years returning to the same person. Every apology sounded convincing. Every promise sounded sincere. Every second chance felt hopeful. And every time the story ended exactly the same way: disappointment, heartbreak, regret. One evening, after another painful breakup, Sophia sat with her grandmother, a woman who had experienced more life than she could imagine. After listening quietly, her grandmother asked one simple question: how many times does someone have to show you who they are before you believe them? Sophia had no answer, because deep down she knew the truth. The problem wasn't lack of information. The problem was lack of acceptance. She kept hoping potential would become reality. She kept falling in love with possibilities instead of patterns. And many people do exactly the same thing. They become attached to who someone could be, instead of paying attention to who someone consistently is. But potential does not build relationships. Character does. Promises do not create trust. Actions do. Words do not determine the future. Choices do. The sooner you understand that, the sooner you stop wasting years waiting for people to become someone they have repeatedly shown they do not want to be. One of the hardest truths in life is accepting that love alone cannot save a relationship. You can love someone deeply and still be wrong for them. You can love someone sincerely and still need to walk away. You can love someone completely and still choose yourself. And that choice is not selfish. It's necessary, because self-respect is not selfish. Boundaries are not selfish. Protecting your peace is not selfish. In fact, those things are often the foundation of every healthy relationship you'll ever have. When people hear the phrase, make him regret it forever, they often imagine revenge. They imagine making him jealous, making him suffer, making him chase. But true regret is created differently. True regret is created when someone realizes they lost access to a person who continued growing, a person who continued evolving, a person who continued building an extraordinary life. Not because they were trying to prove something, but because they refused to let pain define them. Think about that. The greatest regret someone can experience is watching the person they underestimated become everything they never expected. Watching the person they dismissed discover their strength. Watching the person they hurt find happiness. Watching the person they took for granted become impossible to replace. And here's the beautiful part. That outcome doesn't require revenge. It requires growth. It requires discipline. It requires healing. It requires becoming so focused on your future that your past no longer has authority over your decisions. Emma eventually built a life she once thought was impossible. She advanced in her career. She traveled to places she had always dreamed of seeing. She formed deeper friendships. She developed confidence that no relationship could take away. Most importantly, She learned to enjoy her own company, and that changed everything. Because a person who enjoys their own company becomes very difficult to manipulate. They don't stay where they are disrespected because they are not afraid of being alone. They don't settle for crumbs because they know their value. They don't chase people who walk away because they understand that their work travels with them. That is real power. Not the power to control someone else, the power to control yourself, the power to choose peace over chaos, the power to choose growth over bitterness, the power to choose your future over your past. And when you develop that power, something remarkable happens. You stop wondering whether they regret losing you, because your life becomes too meaningful to spend time worrying about people who fail to appreciate it. There comes a point in every healing journey when you finally understand what the pain was trying to teach you. Not why it happened, not why they did what they did, but what the experience revealed about you. Because every heartbreak contains a lesson. Every disappointment contains a message. Every ending contains an opportunity for a new beginning. The question is whether you will receive the lesson or spend your life reliving the pain. Years passed. Emma's life continued to expand in ways she never imagined. The woman who once cried herself to sleep had become someone entirely different. Not because life had become perfect, not because she never experienced challenges again, but because she had developed something stronger than confidence. She had developed certainty. Certainty about who she was, certainty about what she deserved, certainty about what she would never accept again. And certainty is powerful because once a person knows their value, manipulation loses its effectiveness, fear loses its grip, and insecurity loses its voice. One afternoon, Emma was walking through a bookstore when she unexpectedly saw someone she hadn't seen in years. It was him, the man who had once broken her heart. For a brief moment, time seemed to stop, not because she still loved him, not because she still hurt, but because life had brought her face to face with a chapter she thought was closed forever. He looked surprised, then nervous, then thoughtful. They exchanged a few polite words. Nothing dramatic, nothing emotional, just two people who had once shared a story. But as the conversation continued, Emma noticed something. The confidence he once carried was different now. The certainty he once projected had faded. And eventually he said something she never expected to hear. I made a lot of mistakes. Simple words, yet loaded with meaning. For years she had imagined hearing something like that. Back when the wound was fresh, she thought those words would change everything. She thought they would bring closure, validation, satisfaction. But standing there in that bookstore, she realized something surprising. She didn't need them anymore because healing had already given her what she once hoped his apology would provide: peace. And that's the secret many people discover too late. The closure you're waiting for often arrives from within, not from them, not from an apology, not from an explanation, not from revenge. Real closure comes when your life becomes bigger than the wound, when your future becomes more exciting than your past, when your self-respect becomes stronger than your desire for validation. That is when freedom begins. The man looked at Emma and asked a question, "Are you happy?" Without hesitation, she smiled. Yes, and she meant it, not because everything was perfect, but because she had built a life rooted in purpose instead of pain. And there is no greater victory than that. Many people spend years hoping the person who hurt them will regret it forever. But regret is not something you can control. You cannot force someone to recognize your value. You cannot force someone to appreciate what they lost. You cannot force someone to mature. And trying to do so only steals energy from your own growth. The only thing you can control is who you become afterward. You can become bitter, or you can become better. You can become trapped by the experience or transformed by it. You can spend years replaying the betrayal or spend years building a future so meaningful that the betrayal becomes a small chapter in a much larger story. That choice belongs to you, and it belongs to every person listening right now. Maybe someone played you. Maybe someone lied to you. Maybe someone chose someone else. Maybe someone made promises they never intended to keep. Maybe someone broke your trust in ways that still hurt today. But hear this carefully. What happened to you is not the end of your story. It is not proof that you are unlovable. It is not proof that you are broken. It is not proof that you are less valuable. It is simply one chapter, one difficult chapter, one painful chapter, but not the final chapter, because your future is still being written. Your best days are still waiting. Your growth is still unfolding. And the person you are becoming may be stronger, wiser, and more extraordinary than the person you were before the heartbreak ever happened. One day, you'll look back and realize that the experience you thought would destroy you actually revealed your strength. You'll realize that the rejection redirected you. You'll realize that the betrayal taught you discernment. You'll realize that the loss created room for something greater. And most importantly, you'll realize that your worth was never dependent on who stayed. Your worth existed before they arrived. It existed while they were there, and it exists after they leave. That truth is what changes lives. Because once you understand it, you stop chasing people. You stop begging for love. You stop proving yourself. You stop shrinking your standards. You stop settling for less than you deserve. Instead, you begin walking with confidence. You begin protecting your peace. You begin honoring your value, and you begin creating a life that reflects the respect you have for yourself. Ironically, that's often when the people who underestimated you begin to notice. That's when they start wondering. That's when they start comparing. That's when they start realizing. But by then, something important has changed. Your happiness no longer depends on their realization, because you've already discovered something far more valuable. You've discovered yourself. And when a person truly discovers themselves, they become unstoppable. Before I leave you today, I want you to remember something that could change the way you see your entire story. The person who played you took your trust. They may have taken your time. They may have taken your energy. They may have left scars that nobody else can see, but they do not get to take your future. That decision belongs to you. Too many people spend years living in a prison built by someone else's choices. They keep reliving the betrayal. They keep replaying the lies. They keep reopening wounds that should have been allowed to heal. And while they are staring at the closed door behind them, life keeps presenting new opportunities in front of them. Don't let that happen to you. The chapter that hurt you is not the whole book. The disappointment that broke your heart is not the definition of your life. The person who walked away is not the author of your destiny. You are. And from this day forward, I want you to stop asking, why did they do it? Start asking, who can I become because of it? Because that question creates transformation.